So Amazon announced a bunch of things, and we'll get to it in a minute. But first, I'd like to welcome everyone here because you folks are realistically all my friends. And, well, friend is kind of a weird term that catches an awful lot of stuff. You've got, for example, people who are vague acquaintances. You are people who I don't talk to a lot. There are people who are close friends that I talk to all the time. And then, of course, there are folks who I consider soulmates. It really comes down to what tier of friendship of mine you've unlocked based upon, number of large deals you've influenced for me. You haven't really necessarily gone through enough certifications for friendship. And I think I've pretty much beaten that metaphor into the dirt. So let's instead talk a little bit more about the nonsense that was announced, because I've got to level with you. I'm not a big partner program person because I'm not an AWS partner. A true story is that when I was starting this, what this became, I guess, 4 years ago, I was, okay, the partner program, that seems interesting. $2,500, which it's not nothing, and the paperwork was monstrous. So I did a little bit of an exploration as far as what could I do instead if I had that kind of cash to throw into something. And it turned out that was more than enough money to start an email newsletter, and everything that followed is the direct fault of the partner program, which is kind of awesome. Now I'm going to have some, please feel free to throw questions into the chat as we go. I'm thrilled to wind up making weird observations, insulting people on a variety of different levels, and basically just having fun here. We're going to find out how this works. Again, there's 3 weeks. This is basically day 2 of actual keynote announcements. We're going to see what happens. We have plenty of things to wind up talking about as time goes on. So they announced a bunch of things today that came out, like the RDS Service Delivery Program, which I love because it's something partners can do to help customers figure out how RDS works. I love that because it's in direct opposition to the other track where they're talking about how simple and straightforward RDS is. It's terrific because in addition to communicating somewhat strangely with AWS customers, AWS service teams also struggle to communicate internally basically at all. Oh, good. You can also now use, a customer can use AWS Service Catalog App Registry to collect your CloudFormation stacks in a reasonable, comprehensive way, which is awesome because CloudFormation hasn't solved that problem for us in basically forever. So I love watching AWS service teams snap and now focus on solving a problem that the rest of us have had for a while. I think probably the best expression of all of this is the AWS solutions team, where they build overwrought solutions for everything through a lens of, great, we're going to go ahead and build everything using just services customers can use. And it drives people nuts, and you can see the frustration in some of the solutions that they use. The frustrating part is that it's incredibly complicated. They get bonus points on every service that they use, and not only is it weird and janky and wired together, they charge us for it, because why wouldn't they? They also introduced SaaS Boost, or Sauce Boot, depending upon how you want to pronounce that, which is just an absolute blast to work with. Everyone loves it, everyone's happy with it, except no one is either of those things. Instead, what they did is they've taken a reference architecture implementation, open sourced it on how to build SaaS. The challenge is it's coming from a perspective of you've built an on-prem legacy app and now you want to turn it into SaaS, which would have been great 10 years ago. It also suffers from the same problem that basically every AWS reference architecture has since the beginning, where when they have an issue like they did last week in US East 1 and everything sort of breaks, instead of actually fixing it for customers or taking full responsibility, they do point at the shared responsibility model. You own your own availability, which is true. If it's important to you, you should be running multi-region. The counter-argument there is great. So where are the reference architectures of solid multi-region examples on AWS? Crickets. They're not there. So it's one of those do as we say, not as we do type of things. And there's an increasing gap between what they say are architectural best practices at that level and actually what they ship and demonstrate. Let's see. Oh, while we're talking about partners and such, this is sponsored by an AWS partner who had no idea what this talk was going to be about, so I'd like to thank them for it. Specifically, title migrations. That's title as in waves, not title as in big words at the top of things. They tend to take a different approach because whatever methodology you've been using to migrate is awful. You wind up getting inherently nibbled to death by ducks. Absolutely no one's happy. And it just winds up hurting. No one's thrilled. So instead, what they'll do is they have the software stack that will analyze your application, your databases, including your incredibly valuable Oracle databases. Are they valuable? They must be. Look at how much they cost. And then they're going to tailor a bunch of actual recommendations that are aligned with, your business goals, things people actually wind up caring about. And reach out to them, titlemigrations.com, and tell them I sent you. And while you're talking to them, please ask them if they can give me the VM that they migrated back. I wasn't quite done with that legacy thing, even though it was running a version of Linux that hadn't been patched in 500 years. Now, they are an AWS partner, and as I mentioned, they have no idea what this was about. I'm not an AWS partner, and I never have been, because first, it was expensive back when I was bootstrapping this with basically a hope and a prayer. And more to the point, what I do is I focus on AWS bills. And we're AWS partners is the sort of thing that you say when you're negotiating large bills right before you finish the sentence with, so here's my massive list of conflicts of interest, real or perceived. We're not. We are not partners, and that serves as a weird delineator and weird differentiator. And I wound up bidding on, I think it was a security project a while back, and that talking point sounds really stupid in almost anything that is not the AWS bill. So there is value to the partner program, it's clear. I just have a hard time understanding the enormity of it, and judging by today's keynote, so does AWS. They aren't telling terrific stories about how all these things fit together. It was also extremely unclear who their audience was. But let's move on. They've done a bunch of automated discovery work on License Manager, which is not particularly interesting, but something that is more interesting is that you can now buy professional services on the AWS marketplace, which is great. The challenge is to actually sell these things, you've got to tie them back to actual software sales, generally third-party software. So if you're providing just pure management services, this is probably not for you in its current incarnation. AWS IQ is, but to be direct, while I love AIQ, it kind of feels low rent. I want one individual person in their off hours from their day job to go and fix my ridiculous architectural problem. It's appreciated, it's just kind of weird. Oh, someone is asking as well, since there are questions, please throw them in here, where they can buy one of my AWS Hambone shirts from yesterday. There's a link. I'll put it into the Twitters after I'm done with this. I finally gave in and figured other people can get them too. Please don't sue me. All proceeds go to charity because I don't know how to make money on t-shirts. I continue. Okay, they have the Aws Isv, which I learned stands for Independent Software Vendor, which is why there's nothing that says independent, quite like we're part of a big company's partner network. But again, they don't want you looking at those things too closely. They make this available to more or less for software that's integrated with AWS in a variety of different ways, and accelerates making it available to customers in a variety of different ways, and with the AWS sales organization. Now, that last part is the only thing that makes any lick of sense or difference in what they just said. But what it means is that they're going to be incentivizing AWS salespeople to, in turn, wind up selling third-party partner solutions. Now, this is great if you're one of those partners that winds up getting an incentive tied to the sale. I'm concerned, though, that this means that there are a bunch of account managers who are going to be listening for specific keywords like database, and suddenly they're going to perk up and be pitching all kinds of third-party solutions that are completely inappropriate for this. Incentives are only as good as how well you align them to the outcome that everyone wants. And I'm not sure that that outcome aligns with what's best for customers, but what do I know? I'm not an Amazonian. I'm sure they've thought that one through. Oh, someone dropped the link to the Hambone shirts in the chat. Good work. Thank you. It's appreciated. Yes, they also launched a new APN Navigate, whatever the hell that happens to be, a specialization track for travel and hospitality. Yeah, I feel like right now might not be the best year to launch anything in the travel and hospitality space. This would have been fantastic in Las Vegas if that were something that we could all do. It's not. Pandemic. Huzzah. Instead, we get to wind up talking about, oh, here's how you can wind up helping your travel and hospitality clients if they survive this. I don't know. I have some thoughts on that. They're not overwhelmingly positive. Oh, yes. You can also manage your... This was a fun one because I like what it lets you do. You can now programmatically manage your private marketplace through a bunch of publicly available APIs, which gives and it takes. Because originally the whole point of the marketplace, let's not kid ourselves, was to wind up working completely around the nonsense that was the AWS challenge with procurement. Namely, if I'm a third-party vendor and I want to sell something to a big enterprise company, I've got to pretty much give a liter of my blood once a month for 8 straight months to a company's procurement department, so they can in turn wind up giving me everything that I might possibly need to be able to sell them things. AWS has already run that gauntlet. If it just shows up as a line item in their bill, it's great. The challenge, of course, is that not everyone in procurement likes this. So now with these private enhancements, what they do is, oh, now procurement can get into the middle of dealing with the marketplace purchases. The weird part is on both sides of this fence, there are some companies that ban marketplace as a result of this. Some don't implement this at all. So it's going to vary company by company. And of course, AWS gets a cut. I don't really begrudge them for that. It's not like they're taking 30% like the Apple App Store does. But they're also not really providing huge value past getting onto the bill. Now, with private APIs, you can automate what you're allowed to do, what your formal process does. It brings procurement back in, and most importantly, you can have an API to automatically accept contractual terms and conditions. Because let's face it, you weren't reading them anyway. A computer cannot read it way faster than you can. People are going to love that. I don't know if they've run that by customer legal yet, but we'll see. Let's see. They've also had there's been more entitlements, specifically for AWS License Manager. That's right, Entitlement Manager. I'm pretty sure her name is Karen at this point. It winds up letting partners manage customer licenses by provisioning and managing them through AWS itself. The idea being that you sell, 500 seats of whatever it is you do to a customer, and in turn, they wind up getting that tracked, managed, and kept in compliance via AWS native offerings. So that helps a lot. That's more or less what they ran up as far as announcements. There are a few other things I'll get to in a minute, but I will take some questions first. Someone says that, in this case, getting onto the bill is massively important to the U.S. government. Oh, it's worse than that. If we're talking U.S. federal at this point, in some cases, if you break the budget, you will go to prison. They take this somewhat seriously. So as a result, what they do instead is they wind up having, only for GovCloud, the ability to pre-purchase a flat lump sum. In other words, $1 million is where I believe it starts, for a fixed period of time. You can use any services and all services you want up to a cap. Anything left in at the end of it, well, that no longer works for you. It's a great model. I like the idea of being able to prepay things, but you still have the variable use component. It saves you no money. It just keeps people out of prison when dealing with federal government procurement processes, as best I can understand. So, other things to be of note here. They've added a few lenses to their well-architected review, which is great. The well-architected used to be this whole onerous review process, and now it's a well-architected tool, which is both something that lives in the console that acts as a questionnaire, and of course the people who talk about well-architected all the time because they're tools. The value is that it lets you look at what you're doing in your environment and then shames you by making you feel bad for not doing it the way you're supposed to. I find myself wondering exactly how many AWS services would pass this thing under the hood. But now they have different lenses for a SaaS lens or a serverless lens. So you can wind up understanding that, great, if I'm running everything on top of Lambda, maybe stop asking me about my reserved instances, that sort of thing. Okay, there we go. So other question there, or is that a comment? I can't necessarily tell because people aren't asking too many things in the Twitch chat, but that's all right. We can keep rolling with this. Good, good, good. Yes, federal budget is why resellers exist. Awesome. Yeah. The reseller has to pay Amazon even if the government won't. Yeah, there's a reason I never got into the reseller program. Everyone would always suggest that. Oh, hey, Corey, you should go and just be the reseller for all of your customers. Yeah, some of these customers spend hundreds of millions of dollars a year. If they decide to be slow in payment, I've got a problem. I get that it works for a lot of companies, but it was never my model. This incidentally was emblematic of the entire problem that I had with the AWS Partner Network the couple of times I looked into it. It feels like it's trying to shove everyone into more or less the same type of thing. And that's not great. They're also getting away, from a technical perspective, away from their tiering program, which was gated by number of customer references, level of spend, big deals won, etc., and now promoting specific solutions that are vetted and gated accordingly. What this means is you can expect a whole lot more complicated stuff coming to AWS customers as partners struggle to articulate why you should pick their solution instead of someone else's. What's fun is that if you take a look at the marketplace, I don't know too many people who have ever used the marketplace to find a solution and deploy it. They'll use it as a purchasing vehicle. In fact, under most enterprise discounts, 50% of what you spend on the AWS marketplace, in turn, does wind up counting toward your committed spend with AWS. So you could irritate your other vendors by insisting that you pay them all through the marketplace. It's kind of a win. Now, that sounds ridiculous when I say it and cynical. It's something way darker when, and I'm not making this up, AWS salespeople recommend doing this exact same thing. Yeah, see, I can say things and it's endearing. When they say it, it's horrifying. Other questions, comments, and concerns, please keep them coming. Now, unlike the actual keynote itself, I'm not going to have Andy Jassy as a surprise guest, which is kind of a weird thing. The CEO of the company is now our surprise guest who's going to walk on here. How did he get invited as a surprise guest? He said he was showing up. That's the rule. I kind of wish that that were something that more CEOs did and were just honest about it. I'm a guest because I threatened to fire people until I got to the person who would say yes, and here I am. I mostly kid, but the conversation was fascinating. AWS has to walk an incredibly delicate line between what they say about partners and what it is their actual, company does. They have a serious problem in that it is hard to identify a single partner who is doing anything today that AWS is not either competing with or could conceivably be competing with within the next 3 years. That means that you have to wind up walking this tightrope of talking about being customer obsessed and also explaining to all of your partners, which is basically a room full of people most years, that A, we are going to kill you at some point in the future, but B, not today, here's how to work with us. It's a delicate balancing act. I don't think that that's ever going to get there, but we'll see. Someone asked if I think it's likely that AWS would ever split off from Amazon. God, I hope so. I think that would solve a whole bunch of problems. AWS, compared to the larger Amazon parent, has a much more narrow focus, which is great. I don't feel like they're going to be competing with me if I'm, a pharmacy. It also would wind up being great from an antitrust perspective. And let's not kid ourselves, most of the atrocities that Amazon is in the news for from time to time are not AWS side, they're Amazon side. It would also, at a very selfish level, let me filter away from anything with Amazon in it and focus instead on the AWS thing exclusively, because I wind up with a lot of retail junk in my news filters. It's unfortunate. Oh, yeah, someone else points out that it's more delicate to navigate that partner chasm when you take roadmaps into account, because that means that, yes, there are people at AWS who are singing a partner's praises while actively preparing a service to directly compete with them. And we see what happens when Amazon winds up not competing super well. Take a look at Redshift, for example. They talked about how it's the biggest and most adopted data warehouse out there, but Snowflake is doing well too. Oh, it's doing well, because by everything I see, it's kicking the living crap out of Redshift. And once Snowflake got big, the announcement volume around Redshift enhancements skyrocketed, because this is obviously super important. Amazon culturally loses sleep at night when people are at home making money from something that isn't an Amazon product. And they want to find a way to wind up getting some of that too. I'm only being half joking when I say that their product strategy is and remains yes. Oh, good. Someone else is mentioning yes. The partner network for partners is just literally hours and hours of paperwork. Oh my God, yes. I had a company reach out. Corey, you seem to know Amazon. Would you be willing to take a project of helping us navigate the partner requirements? Sure, let me take a look at them. And the response turned half an hour later into nope. It is incredible amounts of paperwork, which, let's face it, isn't really my type of thing. Someone is dropping a link to something on GitHub in there, but that's all right. I don't have an easy way to look at that now. But, good. Yeah, someone's talking about a link to Tim Bray's PRFAQ. In other words, how Amazon winds up releasing these things. I did one earlier this year for a fake AWS PRQ press release. I forget which one it was about. That's right, Elastic Beanstalker, where you wind up effectively hiring someone to go around to every AWS service team and yelling at them about how complex their bill is, tie bonuses to that, and suddenly every billing situation is better a year from now. But sadly, they haven't built it yet, or if so, we haven't seen any indication of it. Oh, someone says that, someone comments that, yes, Snowflake is kicking the living crap out of Redshift, and it is, and they claim otherwise, but somehow QuickSight supports Snowflake. Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. Other questions, comments, concerns, etc. I will point out that Sandy Carter did a fantastic story about talking about what's going on inside of AWS. She's ex-IBM, and then she went from there to go be a VP at Amazon. And ignoring the Amazon stuff and way that they do things that's peculiar, going from IBM to AWS has got to be like moving 40 years forward in technology. Speaking of, they announced as well a mainframe migration competency that partners can get to help migrate legacy mainframe workloads off of the mainframe and into the cloud. Because customers are asking for this. They want to move their mainframe workloads. Sure, of course they do. I want a pony. I'm not putting bids on them because what I want and what I can realistically achieve is super hard. And when you have the mainframe that's processing $4 billion in transactions every hour, you can't move that to the cloud without completely rethinking basically everything. It's sticky and it's hard. Yes, I'm not making that up. There is a mainframe competency. My joke was that someday they were going to release the AWS 400. But honestly, this is kind of neat. A lot of people are interested in these things. Let's see here. Oh, someone's talking about Lambda stuff rounding up. Yeah, not really the partner stuff, but that's all right. We can answer questions about that. Someone round up extreme because to the next millisecond because it was exactly on the 0-0 boundary. That sounds like a bug. Good catch. Open a support ticket and tell me what they say. I desperately want to hear their answer for that because you're right. That's the wrong behavior. There are tiny, tiny, tiny fractions of a penny at stake here. I want to play those games. Let's see, other things of note. Yesterday I was yapping about how the GP3 volumes were absolutely worth migrating to, and they are. You should. The counterpoint is that you need to be careful with doing that at the time because it didn't work on boot volumes. Well, it turns out that was not a feature that is to come in the future. That was, oops, it's a bug, and today it works. So feel free to migrate to GP2. It is painless. You don't have to reboot your instances. You can just convert in place. Their performance is going to be better. Everyone's happy. There is no downside, for God's sake. All you do is you make this one-off change and your EBS bill drops 20%. If there's a problem here, I haven't found it. Just make sure Terraform/CloudFormation are aware of the change or you're going to have some fun. And I've also heard whispers about creating AMIs. Yes, that's 3 syllables, AMI, from GP3 volumes. Is a little janky so far. But again, these are all bugs that, in an ideal world, they might have fixed before rolling it out globally. It's only disks. How important could it possibly be? People are always surprised to hear that one. I love it. Let's see. Other things of note. What do people care about? Oh, yeah, they're talking about my hair. That's great. Last time I really went and got a haircut was in March. This wasn't plan A. I've never grown my hair out. It turns out it's a colossal pain in the ass, and it isn't my first, second, or third choice. The problem is if I shave my head, which is really the other option, I walk around looking like a giant, let's call it a thumb. Yeah, I look like a giant thumb, and that's not going to be a great look when I'm on video as much as I am. This is at least forgivable and understandable, whereas everything else I do isn't. Okay. Someone needs to figure out how to make this EBS change in COPS, K-O-P-S, the Kubernetes thing. Yeah, you're using Kubernetes. Good luck, have fun. Send me a postcard if you ever get there. I have thoughts. They're not flattering. Let's see, other big announcements. Something I found strange is that most years, the reInvent week is just wall-to-wall announcements. Yesterday was surprisingly slow. There weren't too many releases, and now I'm understanding how they're making this spread out over 3 weeks. What bugs me is that there's such a crush of announcements. That EBS change, for example, would have been huge in, April, and people would have rushed to do it. But now, even people paying attention to this don't know that it's there. That's the problem. There are so many services getting released in this torrent from AWS that we all have the same fear. There's this thing that you just released that will absolutely change my business and make my life better. But I won't know it's there because you're too busy just fire hosing things at me in too short a time window. It's really unfortunate. I would love to see the spread out a bit more. The problem comes down to, I don't think anyone has any realistic idea on the AWS side what reInvent is at its heart. They say it's an education thing. Great, education's important, but there's a bunch of releases, and they have a bunch of press stuff, and they do analyst briefings constantly, and they bring big customers in, and they have the giant partner expo to sell things, and. It isn't an environment that has a sense of itself, and it's incredibly challenging to translate even the best run conferences into an online only format this year. reInvent isn't quite that, so it's a problem. Oh yes, biggest beard announcement. This is a good one too. S3 is strongly consistent now. The reactions to that range from what does it mean? It means that at any given point in time, all changes are effectively atomic. 2, that's interesting in a theoretical sense. And the interesting one, 3, holy crap, this can actually let me rip out a bunch of terrible things that tried to force consistency on it for data lakes and whatnot. That is huge and awesome. Someone asked how my return from parental leave went. Great. Not super terribly, actually, because unlike most years, we're in a pandemic. I stayed at home the whole time and got itchy. So it's great to spend time with the tyke, but at some point, I want to get back to work and make fun of things on the internet. I'm glad I took the time off, but I would have preferred it to be a different year, if I'm being honest with you. Thoughts on the mini outpost for the next question? Great. That's right, pricing's not available that I've seen yet, but it looks exciting. It's expensive. You're going to need enterprise support for it. I do like the fact that it got rid of the loading dock requirement for delivery, which is awesome because I was lying about my front porch to Amazon in the hopes that they would send me one of the big outposts. So now they just have individual servers you can slap in a rack, and that they will manage for you. I love outposts just because of what it says. What it says fundamentally is, sure, you can run things on-prem, but you're going to buy cheap, shitty hardware and mismanage the living piss out of it, and it's great. So we're going to take all that problem away from you. This leaves companies with the only real option to completely screw things up being to continue to mess with the power. But don't worry, they're going to find new and exciting ways to break things. Now that they're in just individual server instead of full rack size, that's big. That becomes really useful for an awful lot of different use cases that customers often experience. I'm curious to see how it works. It still has to tether, so you're not going to be able to slap this thing on an oil rig with intermittent connectivity to a region, but it's closer. Let's see, other questions here. Oh, hey, is Afir going to wind up reviewing S3 as a database now? I hope so. My joke about Route 53 as a database, which it is, was originally about S3. The problem is there are enough actual legitimate use cases to use it as a database where I couldn't really argue the point. It was, this is just going to confuse people. Let's go with something way more ludicrous. And Route 53 it is, which is still my favorite service. Oh, hey, someone wound up trying to make change in Terraform, and it yelled at them because GP3 wasn't a valid value. Nearly certainty that it is either Terraform or the library Terraform is hooking, because it just came out, and it turns out that I wrote this late last night, and it's awesome. Put it into production this morning is not something most companies tend to do for massive infrastructure-facing changes. Oh, nice. Someone else says they genuinely use S3 as a database. Yeah, I spoke to someone else, a client who did, and they said, yeah, we built our own columnar store on top of S3 and used it as a database. And I looked at the bucket, and it had 290-something billion objects in the single bucket. And they said, this may not have been the best approach, and I stopped them. Oh, don't worry. There's no maybe about it. This was absolutely not the right answer. Knowing nothing other than what I've just relayed to you, that was not the path to go down. But that's okay. Nothing's perfect. Nothing's ideal. Let's figure out how to make it better from where we are. I'm curious how changes like this make it work. Someone else talks about using AWS tags as a database, which you can do. PackRatDB is a fun project Ben Kehoe named that we're coming up with from time to time, ways to store the most amount of data for free in an AWS account without being charged for anything. All the resources you spin up, 50 tags per resource now. That's an awful lot of keys and values. Someone was once mocked for using S3 as a database. Yeah, let me guess. And then you, before I read the rest of that sentence, what do? You wound up instead deciding, I'll show you, and then you started Athena, and there we are? Because that's what Athena is. It's a database on top of S3. Yeah, it was fast enough to end up using it. Yeah, I used to use that as a key value store for something I was doing before I moved it to Route 53. Not kidding. Okay, favorite S3 database stories from the time when requests to S3 were still free. Yeah. You could wind up just storing everything in metadata with 0-byte objects. Requests were free, so you got a giant unlimited free database. That's why there's a request charge. Now, people say, AWS does raise prices. S3 was in beta, and I don't mean Google beta, where they're just going to have the word beta on something for 20 years. This was before it was generally available, and they were learning from customers as they went. Credit where due, when AWS says something, I find I can trust them. Let's see, how many services can be co-opted into being a database? The correct answer is all of them. The question is how many of them can be co-opted to being a database that isn't complete shit? It's a good question. I'm still waiting to hear that answer from Managed Blockchain. Yeah, Snowflake runs on S3 as the back end. Yep, I believe you're right on that one. They do. Oh yeah, Google beta is the step before they shut a service down. Okay, that's true. My problem with Google turning services off is whenever I say they're going to turn GCP off, I get laughter and derision. Like, that is ridiculous. Of course they're not going to do it. And you're right. That is ridiculous. They're not going to turn GCP off. But if they did, the entire internet's response would be, well, what did you expect them to do? It's Google. So they've really done massive brand damage to themselves with their deprecation policy. Oh, there we are. Let's see what I think about the multi-cloud, but they don't talk about it, narrative for EKS Anywhere, ECS Anywhere and EKS Anywho. Yeah, I love that. I wound up getting a press email thing that said that answers to common questions of can ECS or EKS be run on other cloud providers? And the answer was an entire paragraph. Look, there's no compression algorithm for experience, but there's absolutely a compression algorithm for that answer. All the way down from the paragraph to yes. We think it's a dumb idea, but yes. When they get this defensive about it, it scares the living hell out of everyone because it's like they're refusing to acknowledge the reality that other clouds exist. They exist. Why not tell a story about, yeah, multi-cloud's a bad idea? Because it is. Understand, my perspective is this. You should go all in on a cloud provider. I don't personally care which one. GCP, Azure, great answers as well. IBM Cloud, no, we're talking cloud providers. Oracle, depends on your budget. But there's nothing wrong with the big three as far as picking it and going all in. But do that on a workload basis. Moving up the stack, different divisions of big companies are going to be on different cloud providers. That's fine. That's not the kind of crappy multi-cloud I'm talking about. Other questions, angry concerns, the rants, etc. Oh yeah, they cut down Google Cloud Print, the other GCP. That's being deprecated at the end of the month. And everyone thought it was the other GCP, which is, yeah. And not everyone got the memo that that was a joke. Are there other questions I'm missing? Let's see here. Oh, someone said they once used RDS as a database. Yeah, I did that once too. It was an experience. There's a reason that a number of large customers from who were building this stuff out in AWS in the 2010 to 2014 era did all of their databases, whether they're using Postgres or MySQL, on EC2 instances instead of RDS. It's better now, sure, but the early days of that service were a little rocky. All right, if there are other questions, please paste them back in. I can't scroll or do anything rather than stare at a screen scrolling past. I am thrilled to wind up taking other comments, questions, criticisms, etc. I do wonder why Dave McCann, the VP of Marketplace and the rest, wound up not being in the studio with the rest of the VPs, but it was remote, which is fine. I understand that. But he appeared to have replaced his webcam with a potato. And that's the piece I don't fully understand. So, I mean, again, sure, I'm having weird color balance things, but that's also because I did this last minute. I don't actually know what I'm doing. The real question, instead, is why aren't they just sending out video kits that make this stuff awesome, especially for, keynote guests? Oh, yeah, question. There we go. Which service do I think was the most oversold on its values versus capabilities? I'm going to go an entire segment, machine learning. Also, big data is another one. I think that the fun part of this is that everyone talks about machine learning and tied to big data because it has this amazing potential to search through huge reams of data and find absolutely anything except a business model for continuing to do it. AWS is selling pickaxes into a gold rush with this thing. Everyone wants ML, whatever that happens to mean, but what they really want to do is be on the latest side of the hype curve. All these services wind up making it accessible in a bunch of different ways, and you wind up with a bunch of people talking about how it works under the hood as if my first language was math as well. It's not. I want to know what the business value of this thing is to me, and in many cases, it doesn't make any sense. Let's see. Yeah, someone mentioned about a verbal stumble Andy Jassy made during the keynote. Honestly, I don't care about those. Speaking is super hard, especially when you're doing it live, which I'm not sure the keynote should have been, but it was. And I'm not going to needle people for that, especially given how complicated all these namings are. They have a whole bunch of words that go in particular sequences. It's painful. People apologize that I covered things already. No one sees all the stuff I do. It's fine. I'm thrilled to wind up revisiting these things. Yeah, big data is a euphemism for teenage sex. Everyone talks about it. No one really knows how to do it. Everyone thinks everyone else is doing it. Everyone can claim they're doing it, but no one's actually doing it. Yeah, I hear you. Let's see. Proton hot takes. Yeah. It feels like it does show that it's possible to compete with AWS services and build a successful business on top of that. Proton's the latest example, competing with CodeStar. It looks like their entire approach was, well, what if we did CodeStar but did it right instead of crappy? And that seems to be the answer. I need to look more into it so I can actually figure out if it's any good or not, but I like the team behind it. The people who are working on it are super sharp. They're onto something. I just haven't looked into it enough to know what yet. And given the fact that they dump everything at once, I probably won't get there until February. Let's see here. Why is the Mac offering so damn expensive? I wish I knew. I understand that there's margin they have to worry about. I understand that there's an incredible amount of managed value and R&D and the rest. I don't think it needs to be as high as it is. That said, it is expensive for you or me. It's not expensive for a lot of these companies who are spending, $20 million a month on AWS. They don't care if they wind up costing a few extra grand a month for a bunch of build farms that they now don't have to manage as exceptions to their security policy. But it's not what I want it to be, which is functionally an Amazon Workspaces with Mac OS on it so I can use my iPad once I start traveling again. That would be awesome. I want that. It doesn't exist yet. Yeah. Kudos to Andy Jassy being able to speak for so long with hardly any breaks. Yeah. If you also look back at his early keynotes, 2012 or so, he has come such a long way as a speaker. Not that he was terrible to begin with, but oh my God, is he polished now. Big fan of whatever he's doing, so keep it up. Is T-SQL dead now that you've got that whole ridiculous nonsense? What the hell was that one? What was that? Yeah, T-SQL. That's the Babelfish. They wound up doing all of that nonsense. That was translate Microsoft SQL queries into something that Postgres can understand. And they're open sourcing it, which is great. It also supports stored procedures, which is hopeful. But there have been attempts at this before that never really took off because they got nibbled to death by edge cases and ducks. And that didn't go super well. I'm hoping that they've managed to solve this, but I want to hear from customers using it before I commit to it working. Yeah, someone else couldn't remember the name either. Yeah. We've long since passed the point where I can talk about AWS services that aren't real, and Amazonians won't call me out on it because who the hell can keep all 200 of them in their head? Let's see. Yeah, the 24-hour requirement for Mac OS, yeah, that's an Apple license thing only. It's not because Amazon couldn't figure out a provision a system faster than that. The only company that can't provision a system that fast is basically Dell. Okay. Other things, running Bitbucket server in EC2 and RDS. I don't think that's a terrible idea. I think, running Bitbucket, but that's neither here nor there. I think that there's a lot of things you could do, but again, it depends on what you're trying to solve for. I like hosted SaaS for things like Git repos, which have solved an amazing problem, which is they've taken this decentralized thing that works everywhere and made it centralized again in a service that can charge you money. I dig that. Charge more. I like how they lead with the complexification to fighting complexification, followed by 3 hours of now overcomplicating things. Yeah, good observation. You're right. I look at a lot of these services and it just feels, a lot of them should have been features. I've got to be direct with you here. What was the point? Why would they do this and not wind up instead shoving some of these things into something that at least vaguely resembles what, I don't know, customers would want, like, oh, this thing now offers this other capacity. Nope, we're launching something brand new. Let's see. Any enterprise applications? Let's see here. Oh yeah, anything enterprise application that runs Microsoft SQL is going to get derailed by triggers faster than anything else. Yeah, I'm not a real database person, as my Route 53 comment should have made abundantly clear to most of you, but I'm curious to see what other folks who are database heavy know about. So we'll see. Oh, good one. What events and sessions next week that I'm most looking forward to? Well, I'm making fun of a lot of them, so there is that. I don't tend to see most sessions just because I'm so wall-to-wall with other meetings, snark, etc. But occasionally I'll find myself with spare time and I'll live tweet something. Mylan, the VP of storage at AWS, had a great panel that I caught the replay of last night and did a tweet thread on about bold decisions in critical moments. Just a bunch of other folks talking about a variety of different experiences. And the panelists were dynamite. Someone was on the board of Verizon talking about how speed was everything. And it's, yep, you are on the board of Verizon and not Sprint. Thanks for noticing. There were folks talking about, one woman said that, my resume is pretty simple and straightforward. I just founded Trend Micro and I've been the CEO there for 30 years. Like, oh yeah, simple resume. Anyone can do it. You want to feel like an imposter? Look at some of these people's bios. Let's see. Other questions. Enjoying all the snark. Keep up the great work. Of course, I'm doing my best. It's, that was Rodos, AWS person. Hi, Rodos. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's nice when Amazonians weigh in with something other than a cease and desist. I really do appreciate that. Let's see. Will DevOps Guru take my job? That depends. Is your job getting absolutely roasted by DevOps Twitter? Because if so, maybe. Otherwise, not so much. There have been companies tilting at this windmill for at least a good 10 years of, we're just going to look at all of the previous tickets that were opened and the root causes were, and then just check those things. And you wind up with basically an idiot bot. Is it DNS? Are you sure it's not DNS? Last time it was a customer who was drinking or a power cable went out. Like, I don't want to hear a list of everything it could possibly be. And everything that's tried to do this has failed. Maybe they've cracked the nut. I'm a little skeptical. We're going to find out. Oh, is the WePower Tech leadership session? Wonderful. I was not aware of that. Did not label itself as leadership session what I saw. So good to know. Let's see. Things I'm looking forward to next week. Most of the keynotes, most of making fun of things, mostly indulging my ongoing love affair with the sound of my own voice and fixing my video, but that's neither here nor there. Let's see, you want to know all 100 and someone says 88 or 68? Great. Oh yeah. There are many more now from the time that Forrest recorded that song. And that's the problem, is to keep updating it every time. It's not a remix, it's an update. Sorry, Forrest. I tried to complete the ECS workshop during a weekend. All right, story time, why not? I was dragged in about 2 years ago when it first launched to conduct a partner-led training. The partner was paying me, and to act as a instructor for a 4-hour class at an AWS office teaching them how to use EKS. The first 3 hours was basically getting people to understand how to log into the AWS console and get working with IAM. This is the problem. We think in terms of these advanced services and how awesome they are, but there's an entire industry out there that doesn't know how this stuff works, and it's not their fault. This stuff is complicated. Companies are not all the ones that get dragged on stage. My biggest fear is that you have these companies doing amazing things and they're the reference customers and they talk on stage. And then I look at my crappy data center, which is visualized behind me, and my application, everything's breaking all the time and I feel bad. How come I'm not like that? Well, a lot of those companies aren't really like that either. Keynote stories about what your architecture looks like are never fully honest. And it's an evolution. There's always someone further ahead. There's always someone further behind. Let's see here. Vending accounts. Where you wind up giving a whole bunch of account stuff earlier on. Yeah, I'm not going to go into that at all. That's a mess. Don't get me started on that. Oh, any Becky Weiss section? Yeah, Becky's talks are amazing. Anytime she talks about IAM, you're going to learn something. Also, if you want nightmares, I'm not suggesting this is ever possible, and I don't believe it to be, but just imagine a global IAM outage in which it failed open. Isn't that a fun little thing to imagine? Makes the S3 bucket problems look adorable. People are talking about Rick Houlihan's talks about DynamoDB. Yeah, everyone has their own personal favorite AWS presenter about different things. It's super interesting. Oh, someone mentions AWS has a tool internally to vend a whole bunch of accounts for seminars and what, but they won't share it externally. Yeah, I want this to be shared. Forget partners. I want it shared with customers, because what I want to do is, great, I want to spin up an AWS account to give to you to do something in when I hire you for a project or something. And do whatever you want, go nuts, no limitations other than maybe some basic guardrails. And then I want the entire account to be deleted, gone, dead. And I can do it to resources within the account with AWS Nuke, but I want to be able to have ephemeral accounts for testing things. Yeah, Ian Mackay's approach to this is the only one that works. And it's awful. It does nonsense like spinning up Amazon Connect to get a phone verification and Lambdas firing off and screen scrapers and a service that solves CAPTCHAs for you. It's really bad, but it's the only way to do it. Is automated account destruction still against terms of service? I don't know that it ever was, unless it was, someone else's account. I didn't notice it in there, but effectively bypassing a lot of their controls is almost certainly against some various term of service or another. I would love to see Amazon try and enforce that one, just because getting dragged for their crappy lack of feature parity is amazing. Amazing. Where is Tim Bray's session? Yeah, he wound up quitting in protest over a bunch of things Amazon does. I missed him. Tim's fantastic. I love learning stuff. He was one of the folks who built the XML spec and then spent the next 20 years trying to make amends for having invented the XML spec. That was huge. Incredibly brilliant technologist. I love watching basically everything he does. Let's see. AWS budgets actually allow me to set a hard spending limit. Yeah, you can't. Here's why. AWS doesn't know how much money you just cost until 8 to 12 hours later in the best of times. It doesn't know that you just did that. It has to do a whole bunch of number crunching. So by the time it detects that you just spun something up, it's going to have, shoot down the instance you just spun up 12 hours ago until you know? It doesn't work. You'd have to build an entire different approach to budgeting that would require a rethink of an awful lot of stuff. And I'm not saying it's impossible. They made S3 consistent. How could anything be impossible compared to that? But oh my God, is that hard? Worst new service or feature name. And what better name would I give it? I'm sorry, Trainium. It's awful. Complete crap. We're going to build an entire training workload chip, and we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to do it, and then spend, $4 on naming it? I don't get that. Lookout for Equipment was also a particularly dumb one that I wasn't a fan of. Are you just naming things after things you see in a warehouse factory floor? Drives me nuts. Okay, someone wants to remove all their personal goal for next year. They want to remove compute processing from AWS and start using Jenkins distributed builds on their work laptop. Okay, help save money and still get your nightly build. Thoughts? Yeah, the problem is you're going to wind up being nibbled to death by ducks again. Figure out what you're actually spending on those nightly builds and how long they're running for. I think Spot might be a better answer for you than that, or Fargate with Spot, depending. Because managing all the laptops and all the finicky aspects of it, make sure everyone leaves it in, plugged on, turned on, etc., is awful. It feels like you are setting yourself up for a bunch of undifferentiated toil that is prone to break and is fragile, in the hopes of saving money on a few things. And I feel like that comes from the place of where an engineer, and I'm as guilty of this as anyone, who believes that their time isn't worth much. I assure you, you're wrong. It is. Our time is more expensive than our AWS resources in almost every case, and I fix big bills for a living. duckbillgroup.com if you're interested on that one. Yeah, scheduled instances that actually nightly. Yeah, scheduled instances are not great. They used to exist. Or wait, the instance scheduler that automatically turns things off at particular times? Sure, that works. They used to have scheduled RIs, which is what I was thinking of, and that was crap. Don't do it. The scheduled RIs were an attempt, didn't work, they weren't updated, and they only support a handful of instance families, none of which are modern. So, failed experiment. But yeah, the scheduled instances, go for it. Let's see, workstations for a nightly build, a job queue. Yeah, it is awful. It absolutely is awful doing local build. And that's the real reason they have these Mac OS EC2 instances. So you can take these terrible, awful, broken things and in turn, shove them somewhere else. And now you're able to have it in a managed environment where the power is not going to go out, the cleaning person is going to unplug it to plug a vacuum in unless it's in US East 1, and everything gets better. There is value to that. That's why they can charge 10 times more a year than the Mac Mini itself costs, because it's worth it. Let's see, other questions here. Yeah, the Copilot CLI supports GitHub, but not CodeCommit. Yeah, I'm not sure CodeCommit has customers. or a use case, but that's all right. I take it back. There is a use case. Specifically, large regulated environments with the procurement department I was just talking about. We've gotten AWS through all of our auditing, et cetera, and the rest. Onboarding a new vendor takes years. Let's just use the AWS option. In seriousness, that's why an awful lot of big companies make some of the decisions they make. Let's see here. Yeah. Other comments, questions. People are chatting with each other, which is awesome. I'd love to see it. Just my only question is are there questions in there that are being buried and I'm missing? I did see someone ask a while back, why do they use Mac Minis for this instead of MacBook Pros? I think that's a terrific question, and I want to ask the people who built this out just to see the annoyed look on their face. I'm sure it's a great answer. My answer is, well, MacBook Pros are a lot more expensive. Like, yeah, but you could have charged even more, so why not? Thoughts on ECR Public? Yeah, the Elastic Container Repository is now offering public downloads that, like Docker Hub used to, and now they're putting limits on it and breaking people's workflows. So now AWS is stepping into the role of giving things away to people for free because unlike Docker, they're able to make money and they can afford to do it. It's kind of nice. I've never understood Docker's business model, and I still don't understand Docker's business model. Let's see. Oh yeah, part of the DevOps team from Global R&D. Cloud Operations blocked access to AWS Billing Console. To be fair, they very well may not have enabled it for IAM users, but whenever I see this, I consider it a bug. Because let me get this straight, you're empowered to have access into production and spin things up and spin things down, but you're forbidden from seeing how much those things you spun up cost. I'm not a big believer of the FinOps horse pucky that everyone likes to talk about, but you have to wind up at least having some conversations between engineering and finance. The biggest problem is the organizational distance in large companies between the people who can impact the bill and the people who receive the bill. It's like a game of corporate telephone. The giant bill comes in and, oh, Amazon, how many books did engineering buy? I expected to see them reading more for that kind of price. It's awful. Let's see. You know, Docker has no business model. Everyone agrees with that. Yep. Sounds like I'm off the hook. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, good point. If you're not able to see the bill either, great. You can't be blamed for anything because how could you possibly know what something costs? What makes it even worse, the bill's the only single place you can see every resource in your entire AWS environment. There's no inventory service anywhere else. Let's see, anything else of note here? I'll keep doing this as long as people want to hear me. And we still have 100 people watching, so cool. We're going to keep doing this. Why not? Let's see. Probably because you can actually rack Mac Mini. Yeah, they built a custom case for it and are putting that in the racks. Sure, you can build custom cases and shove a bunch of closed clamshell mode laptops in too. I don't think that physical hardware fabrication is the determining factor on this one, but that's my guess. Someone says there's no way they're using an actual Mac Mini. Incorrect. They've talked about this. They're doing actual Mac Minis that they put into these shell that they built, plug into the thing with a bunch of ports, and they have a Nitro sidecar thing that handles all of these things. It's super neat. I'm hoping that they get more into that in their infrastructure keynote about how they did it, but we'll see. Let's see. Is there a different... no, that's not for me. Good, good, good. Could someone link a condensed list of what's new? Yeah, go to requinnvent.com. I'm going to be posting the extracts of what I've been saying so far, but there's also a bunch of pointers. I'll be up there soon. Let's see. Thoughts on U1 and U2 outposts? Yeah, just the other ones, the smaller ones. I love the idea. I love the idea of being able to just get a server that runs some stuff and put it in the rest of my nonsense. I just don't understand the story where that's going to be transformative. I get it, it's for smaller shops that want something like this, or you don't need a full rack somewhere. We're going to see. I'm sure there's customer demand for it, but I'm not that customer. Someone else asked, couldn't they work out the licensing EFI or BIOS bits to Hackintosh the OS? Absolutely not. Do you have any idea what it takes to move Apple as a company? Because Apple considers themselves fundamentally a hardware company, and they're not willing to reduce themselves to the role of software vendor. They want to sell Macs. That's their goal. So yeah, just go ahead and take the operating system and run it on non-Mac hardware where we no longer control an integrated experience. Doesn't end well. I can't ever see them getting there. But then again, I've been surprised before. Any guesses how the S3 consistency works under the hood? With tremendous levels of engineering difficulty. There were senior engineers even a few years ago saying it was not possible. It's possible, but it feels like a bunch of work and a crap ton of breakthroughs. Hey, someone migrated their EBS volume, single one, from GP2 to GP3. Good work. That's 80% off. You can buy me a drink after the savings account up for that single volume in 8 years. It'll be great. The CIA will be investigating outposts. Maybe, maybe not. It depends. I mean, remember, the CIA has an entire intelligence cloud. At least one of them, if not more. I forget the exact number of private environments AWS has built for the intelligence community. But they've got a crap ton of other things going on. So I don't know that the CIA necessarily wants a single thing. I feel like they're fine with just put it in the cloud that we pay you people for. I would expect to be a billing model for ECS anywhere where all of your resources are not within AWS. I don't believe so. I think that would be fascinating, but it begins to look a lot like Anthos, and I haven't seen huge adoption on that yet, so we'll see. Hot take on Proton, which I already covered earlier, mostly just that it's code commit only, code star only good, but I want to wait and play with it and see what happens. Oh, the U2 spy plane joke. Yeah, sorry, it sailed right past me. I haven't been getting a whole lot of sleep this week for obvious reasons. Let's see here. Apple, people are just explaining some of these things. Someone should explain the ham bone shirt joke. Cool. So, story time. Yesterday I wore an AWS ham bone shirt. That was the stock line art drawing in the keynote speaker template PowerPoint deck. And no one knew what the hell it was about, so I grabbed a copy of it, turned it into a shirt, and called it AWS ham bone. And it's basically my way of making fun at some of the AWS corporate ridiculousness. It was fun. I enjoyed doing it, but it's not real. That's why I only did it for fun and a lark for me and got another one for my daughter. Now it's people want it, fine. I just threw it up on Custom Ink for 2 weeks, and all proceeds go to benefit 826 National. So go for it. Send cease and desist to me. I know you know where I live by now. Anything else of note? Comment, questions? I'm about out of content and ideas, and we're at the hour. So thank you all for watching / listening. I'll be doing more of these over the coming, 2 weeks, and continuing to make fun of basically everything AWS does, says, thinks, etc. Thanks for listening, and I will catch up with you folks later.